In the unassuming suburbs of Atlanta, a young woman's facade of success and elegance concealed a dark and evil reality, one that would ultimately lead to a shocking betrayal that would shatter the lives of those closest to her. Layla James, a stunning and ambitious woman in her late 20s, had built a reputation as a savvy entrepreneur, flaunting her wealth and success on social media for all to see. Her luxurious lifestyle, replete with designer clothing, exotic vacations, and a plush mansion, was the envy of many. But beneath the surface of her glamorous existence, Layla's true nature was far more complex and even dangerous. Raised by her single mother, Denise, in a middle-class home, Layla had grown up with a strong sense of determination and drive. Her mother, a hard-working and devoted parent, had sacrificed tirelessly to provide for her daughters, instilling in them the importance of education, hard work, and family values. While Layla's sisters, Alicia, Tanya, and Latasha, had all grown into compassionate and empathetic individuals, Layla's personality had taken a decidedly different path. Despite her polished exterior, Layla had always harbored a deep-seated sense of greed and selfishness, traits that she had carefully concealed from her family and friends. Her insatiable desire for wealth and status had become an all-consuming force, driving her to make choices that would ultimately lead to devastating consequences. Behind the closed doors of her opulent mansion, Layla James led a secret life, one that was diametrically opposed to the image of success and respectability she had so carefully crafted. The truth was that Layla's wealth and status were not the result of her business acumen or entrepreneurial spirit, but rather her involvement in a far more sinister and lucrative enterprise, drug dealing and human trafficking. Layla's descent into the world of organized crime had begun innocently enough. During her college years, she had become fast friends with a charismatic and well-connected young woman named Maya. Unbeknownst to Layla, Maya was already deeply entrenched in the local drug trade, working as a low-level operative for a powerful cartel. As their friendship deepened, Maya began to introduce Layla to the lucrative world of drug dealing, and Layla, driven by her insatiable desire for wealth and status, proved to be a quick and eager learner. Before long, Layla had become a valuable asset to the cartel, using her natural charm and business savvy to expand their operations and increase their profits. As her involvement with the cartel deepened, Layla's wealth began to grow at an exponential rate. She invested in luxury real estate, high-end fashion, and exotic vacations, all while maintaining a carefully constructed facade of legitimacy. Her family, oblivious to the true source of her wealth, couldn't help but be impressed by Layla's rapid success. Her mother, Denise, beamed with pride as Layla showered her with expensive gifts and lavish gestures. Layla's sisters, Alicia, Tanya, and Latasha, looked up to her as a role model, aspiring to emulate her success and sophistication. Life went on smoothly in the James family until the sad day that changed everything for the family. It was a crisp autumn weekend, and Layla had decided to visit her mother's house, ostensibly to spend some quality time with her family and reconnect with her roots. As she arrived at the modest suburban home, Layla was greeted with the warm smile of her mother, Denise, who was delighted to see her successful daughter. As Layla settled into the familiar surroundings of her childhood home, she began to unpack her bags and catch up with her mother. But just as they were starting to relax and enjoy each other's company, Layla's phone rang, shrill and insistent. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to answer it, but something about the caller's persistence made her feel compelled to pick up. She excused herself and went to her room to receive the call. As she listened to the voice on the other end of the line, Layla's demeanor changed in an instant. Her eyes narrowed, and her face grew tense with anxiety. She was speaking to one of her cartel associates, discussing the details of an upcoming shipment and the distribution of their illicit goods as well as how to capture more people for trafficking. She cut the call and was about to go back to the sitting room, only for her to see her mother at the door of her room, staring at her in shock and disbelief. Denise's eyes had widened in shock as she listened to Layla's conversation, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just heard. She felt as though she had been punched in the gut, her breath knocked out of her. The realization that her daughter was involved in something so evil and illegal left her reeling. As Layla realized that her mother had overheard her conversation, she felt a wave of panic wash over her. She knew that she had to act quickly to contain the situation and prevent her mother from exposing her secret. Layla's eyes locked onto her mother's, and she could see the fear and confusion written across her face. Layla's instincts kicked in, and she launched into a desperate attempt to deflect her mother's questions and keep her secret safe. She tried to downplay the significance of the conversation, but Denise was not convinced, and she pressed Layla for the truth. Layla told her mother it was a prank call and that she shouldn't worry about it, but her mother knew her game, and they both kept on arguing and yelling at each other. Angrily, Denise went to the dining room to get her phone and she dialed 911. Immediately she opened her mouth to talk. Layla's anxiety reached a boiling point. In a fit of rage, she grabbed a nearby candle holder and struck her mother with it, delivering a crushing blow to the back of her head. Denise crumpled to the floor, her body limp and lifeless. Layla, realizing what she had done, was overcome with panic. She knew that she had to act quickly to cover her tracks and avoid detection. In a desperate bid to conceal her crime, Layla attempted to destroy any evidence that might link her to the murder. As Layla frantically tried to clean up the crime scene, she knew that she had to come up with a convincing alibi to avoid suspicion. She quickly concocted a story, planning to tell a story of how she had gone out for a walk and returned to find her mother's lifeless body. Realizing that the call to 911 was still on, she ran out of the house with her phone, her mother's phone, and the candle holder. Few hours later she came back to the house walking in like she was oblivious of what had happened earlier. By the time she got back home, her siblings whom had been called but their mother's neighbors were already there, and she acted surprised, telling them that she had felt like strolling out when she got back home, and she had gone for a stroll. She asked them what happened, and innocently they told her that the police had come to their mother's house when they received a disturbing call where she called them to report a crime. But that before she finished reporting the crime they heard a scream and a loud thud, and so the police traced her location only to meet her dead on the floor. The entire neighborhood and the four sisters mourned their mother's death together, and the entire town became frightened because they all thought a murderer was on the loose, not knowing that the murderer was in their midst. After about 8 weeks later, they tried to move on with their lives while the police continued with their investigation. However, exactly 10 weeks after the murder, Layla James was arrested for murder in front of her huge mansion. And when she arrived at the police station, they played a recording of her conversation with her mother and a video of how she had killed her mother. She was shocked beyond belief. Also, the police showed her a note attached to the videotape sent to the police. She recognized the handwriting on the notes. Before she was finally put in the holding cell, a message entered her phone, and the message was from her cartel. And she and the police listened to it together. They made her know that ever since she had joined them, they had installed mix and secret cameras in her mother's apartment as well as every apartment that she had ever owned. And this they did in order to keep her in check if she ever betrayed them, and this she did by asking them for more payment for her services. About 2 weeks ago, Layla broke into uncontrollable tears because she couldn't believe that the cartel that she had obeyed, trusted, and had stayed loyal to for years could do that to her. So apparently they knew everything that had transpired in her mother's house that day, but intentionally waited till the day she would annoy them. With all these evidence, she confessed to the police that she had joined the cartel ever since she got into college because she wanted to get rich quickly, and luckily for her, her roommate in her dormitory belonged to a cartel, and when she sensed her interest she brought her into the group. And that was how her journey into drug dealing and human trafficking started. When these horrible secrets of hers got out, our sisters were devastated, and so also was the community that she came from, because neither her sisters nor the community as a whole could believe that a young lady they all admired for her hard work and entrepreneurial skills is actually an evil and monstrous being who would not only bring harm to others but will also go as far as killing her own mother in order to keep her horrible and terrible secrets. As Layla sat in her jail cell, she was forced to confront the reality of her actions. The evidence against her was irrefutable, and she knew that she would have to face the consequences of her crime. The shock and denial that had initially gripped her began to give way to a cold, hard realization: she was going to pay for what she had done. The trial of Layla James was a sad and dramatic event, with the prosecution presenting a wealth of evidence against her. The recording of her conversation with her cartel associates, the video of the murder, and her own confession all contributed to a damning case against her. In the end, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, and Layla was convicted of her mother's murder, drug dealing, and human trafficking. The sentence was severe: life in prison without the possibility of parole, with hard labor. The impact of the sentence on Layla's family was devastating. Her sisters, Alicia, Tanya, and Latasha, were left to pick up the pieces and try to make sense of the tragedy that had befallen them. They struggled to come to terms with the fact that their own sister could be capable of such a heinous crime, and to top it all, she had killed their mother. The police till date are still on the hunt for the cartel that Layla worked for, but they have not yet been lucky enough to nail them to a particular location, despite all of the information they had gotten from Layla. The case served as a stark reminder of the dangers of greed and deception. Layla's desire for wealth and status had consumed her, leading her down a path of destruction and chaos. Her story was a cautionary tale, one that highlighted the importance of living a life of integrity and honesty. In the end, Layla's conviction and sentencing brought a measure of closure to the community, but it did little to ease the pain and suffering of those who had been affected by her actions. The memory of Denise James, a loving mother and devoted member of her community, would live on, a reminder of the devastating consequences of Layla's greed and deception. What lessons do you think society can learn from this case? Share your thoughts below. If you found this story compelling, please consider sharing it to spread awareness. Like this video, subscribe to uncover more true crime stories where deception and truth collide. Click here to watch another chilling case in our series.